I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mr. Allen?
Here.
Mrs. Davis?
Here.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Here.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Here.
Mr. France?
Here.
Mr. Marshall?
Here.
Mrs. McGrattan? Here. Mr. Soms?
Here.
Mrs. Wadecki? 8 here, 1 absent.
Thank you. And happy birthday to Mr. Soms. You don't get a day off on your birthday when it comes to Ledyard Town Council. Are there any resident and property owners wish to speak before the council? Mr. Cherry.
Good evening, Mike Cherry, 5 Whippoorwill Drive. I'm also chairman of the Planning Commission. I'm not here to speak on behalf of the Planning Commission. I'm here to speak on my own behalf as an elector and a taxpayer in town. We had some monumental decisions tonight to move a process along that started long ago. Noticed comments in the paper like, well, it's all been done behind closed doors. How could we know? And I guess all I would say is, if you have an opinion, it's only an opinion that gets voiced, and there's been ample opportunity for everybody to voice their opinions in person. I know Dr. Vernier had public forums, many of us went, and at the first public forum I went to, my comment to Dr. Vernier and Ms. Hightower were, gee, I see a lot of people that I expect to see at town meetings, people that are commissioners or on boards or the counselors or on the Board of Ed, or they're involved in the school system one way or another, but the general public doesn't seem to be here. And Dr. Vernier took that on. And those forums and walkthroughs and visits were eye-opening. My daughter went to Ledyard Middle School, and at the time I thought it was kind of neat. Well, it's 3 years ago. It's still kind of neat, and I would have enjoyed it because I'm mildly ADD, so if I could sit in a cluster and learn 4 times as fast because I could hear 4 different things all at once, it'd be great. But most kids don't learn that. The forum I went to was prior to Newtown, and the comments, I think, we surprised Dr. Vernier because we talked about fire breaks and firewalls and security before it was front page news. The time is now. Yes, it's expensive. It won't get any cheaper. My experience on the Planning Commission tells me that applications are picking up, more things are happening, houses are moving, people who are realtors are seeing that. Prices are going to go up. We know that. The police station, we've been talking about the police station for many years. There was a previous mayor who was talking about the police station. Many years we've talked about it. When we did the facility studies, one of the things that was in the facility study was the police station. When we started talking about it seriously, I didn't understand the whole breadth of the problem. So I called Lieutenant Finkelstein and said, hey, you got some time? Can I come down and talk to you? He gave me a tour of the facility. So the opportunity for anybody to learn what was being done, see what was being planned, has been there for years, and they shouldn't be surprised. I strongly endorse these as a taxpayer and an elector. You have the written correspondence from the Planning and Zoning Commission endorsing both projects in accordance with Connecticut General Statute 824, and that says much more than I could say as an individual. So I ask your consideration and your careful deliberation. I know money's tight, but it's only going to get tighter and it's only going to get more expensive. And there's some real needs that these projects fill. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else like to speak? Any resident or property owner wish to speak before the town council? Mr. Lamb.
Good evening. Robert Lamb, 99 Long Town. Got a couple of questions. Footing drains for new construction, tying them into a city drainage system. Talking in particular about Bittersweet. In lot 62 on the plan, I talked with the town planner, he didn't think it was acceptable. Don't know, that's why I'm asking the question. When we did the Highlands, the street reconstruction, there was some drainage systems that were cut off, 2 and 3 inch pipe that went into the street drain system. They no longer work. But we have lot 62 that is approved. It shows a curtain drain going into the storm drain system. Had a phone call from the 2 people across the street on Avery Hill, Callan and Delaney. I believe they've been to the planning commission numerous times when the project was under design and development plans were submitted. They were concerned about the additional runoff through the drainage easement, which goes through their property. They were told it wouldn't be an increase. They used to see running water from maybe November through April, dry during the summer. Now they're concerned if you got curtain drains, footing drains, and other things that have been approved, I believe, according to the plan, they're concerned about the additional runoff on their property. So they're, I think, going to be coming back to you. I told them I was coming tonight, and I would refresh your memory. Elgin Heights, the water system. The contractor's back working. They've been doing side streets. At the end of the day, they make a temporary patch on the excavated areas, same as they did on the main highway of Avery Hill Road. Makes it passable, eliminates any potholes or whatever. We have a project on Cedar Ridge. The road has been tore up for approximately 6.5 months. It's mud, no temporary patch. One company must adhere to it. The other one is kind of let slide. The 2 curtain drains at the end of Cedar and Oak Ridge are full. They did put some filter fabric last week over them, but it's not going to do any good. The water stays on the surface now because the drains are full. So in Elgin Heights, they do a pretty clean-up job. Another contractor is not being checked on. Back to Bittersweet, the mayor and I and Mr. Maslin was out there, I believe on the 13th, no, the 11th. We walked the site. We both determined the catch basins were full. The silt coming down from the construction sites filled the sumps, which are 2 foot. Now anything that goes into the sumps goes straight through, goes down to the plunge pool. The plunge pool has now got grass growing in it, and it goes directly to the drainage easement across Avery Hill Road into these 2 people's property. They're concerned, and they want to know why they haven't been maintained by the developer, not the town. The town's got a year guarantee on the development according to the plans. And it's been a couple, 3 weeks, nothing's been done. The developer should probably be notified that if you clean them out, it's going to prevent dirt going from the neighbor's property. Cedar Ridge, as you know, the last snowstorm couldn't be plowed because it was mud, rut, whatever. The loggers are in there working. Their builders are back building the second house. The first house is up for sale. I believe Mr. Larkin sent the developer a letter saying that he can't sell the house. He's got till June 1st to pave the street. Hopefully it's time now not to issue a CO until these things are corrected and meet the town standards. And if you want pictures of Cedar Ridge and the snow plowing got done, I got them for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your...
Somebody will answer these, right?
We're meeting with you tomorrow, Mr.
I know, but this is separate.
It is?
Well, you can address them tomorrow.
We will.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Yes.
I will address some of them.
Oh, yes, please do.
If Mr. Lamb is here. If he's not, I'm not going to bother.
Oh, are you staying, Mr. Lamb?
In the mayor's report?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd be glad to.
Would you rather do it now, or would you rather wait to the mayor's report?
Got the mayor's report now.
That's fine. Okay. At this time, are there any other resident and property owners who would like to address the council? Okay. Committee, commission, and board reports. Pension board, you are up.
I'll try to make this quick. First, I want to say thanks to some of the town employees that work with us in ex officio and other support capacities. Of course, we all know who the best town council secretary in the world is. Nancy Goslin and Marcia Hancock have been invaluable in helping us get information when we needed it. And Don Steinhoff and Bill Merrill have also been very helpful. There's an old white-haired guy that sometimes helps us out, but it's only if he's in town and it's not snowing. I also want to thank council for passing all the ordinances and plans, and I know we put you through a lot in this last year with all the different things that we did. I think we're done with all of that now. Since we formed up the committee, which actually formed in September, November of 11, we've interviewed and hired new custodians, Webster Bank. Marcia Hancock will tell you they are wonderful. They get the town employees the money the day they're supposed to. There's no waiting periods. They're doing a great job. We've brought on new advisors, fiduciary investment advisors out of Hartford area. We're very pleased with their services. And we've continued with Siegel as our actuary. We've created an investment philosophy statement and a much, 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 much more diversified asset allocation. From a personal perspective, I would not have called the portfolio diversified prior to the shift. Again, with your help, we've cleaned up the plan documents and ordinances and working with the mayor and the school board to get all the unions on the same page as regards to pensions and 401ks. Currently, there are 2 unions in the town that work for the school board that are 201. Two that are not yet on board in the switch that you guys have made. So we're working to get that done. The mayor's been very helpful with that. The town's instituted some new policies as regards to the pension fund to ensure that employees get timely answers. They've also stopped a policy of paying for actuarial calculations whenever they were asked for. An actuarial calculation cost us $360. You can do it on a piece of paper for about nothing and come within 1 or 2%. So what we've had is Siegel is now putting more different samples on the employee's annual statement, so they can see if they're retired at this age, this age, this age, and this age, what happens, rather than having people run multiple actuarial calculations. And the next thing that we're currently working on is, while we have a defined contribution plan right now, it was kind of done in a hurry. So we're looking to see if we can't leverage our 457 plan and our defined contribution plan and get some better deal from some provider that will include a lot more education for the town employees. Education is one of the key factors that we're looking at from the provider. The other is obviously cost and making sure they have good investment choices. So we're working on that. And I can't give a presentation on the pension without numbers. So last year we had a 10.9% return on the pension fund. We beat our blended benchmark by about 0.5%. So that's excellent performance. We have this benchmark, which is this thing you can't actually buy, and with cost and all, we beat it by 0.5%. So FIA did a good job. Actuarially, we're still smoothing, and in 2011, which is the last year we have for final actuarial numbers, the fund was funded at 70.41%. The assumed rate of return is 6.25%. So if we did 10, obviously, we're a lot better off than where we have been the last few years. So we've clearly made up some more ground in the funding. We're probably, and without knowing everybody who's come and gone and all the other different actuarial facts, back of the napkin math is probably 75 to 77% funded. Because we're smoothing, we're not going to be able to take credit for some of that. Because normally if you do well, you can reduce how much you have to put in each year. But because we're on a smoothing plan, we don't get to do that. Because we're going to smooth in the gains as well as the losses. So essentially the contribution rate's going to need to be the same as was established. 13-something%. One last development, which is really not totally about the pension fund, but Moody's has put out that they're developing new statistics and algorithms for analyzing pension health. Why do we care when you guys go out to bond these big projects? They're going to look at us in a different way than they have in the past. They're going to disallow smoothing and do mark-to-market. They're going to use lower rates that are effectively going to mean they're going to cost us more. The final plan, I can't tell you the actual impact because the final plan doesn't come out until April. But I just wanted you to know that this is going to become an issue for, when you get to go with bondings if Moody's is changing our ratings. I think we're all right on the better side of that. They are going to look at what we've done and the changes that we've made over the last few years to give us some mitigation, but they're just not going to be as easy as they've always been. Example, I can tell you one town, town in New Haven I happen to know, is in big trouble because their pension fund is only 50% funded. So now that's a big asset liability that they move over and say, oh, the town has this liability that they weren't counting before. So how it will affect us, I don't know exactly, but I just wanted everybody to be aware that these things do interact. I've provided you the latest annual report and the CEMO valuation. Feel free to read through any and all of that at any time. If you need to go to sleep, you need to catch a nap, you want to snooze and you get a boring speaker like me, go for it. I'll take any questions that you may have now.
Any questions? Councilor Sons.
I wonder, since the pension board is relatively new to the town, I think you have some of your members here, if you could just introduce everybody, if you wouldn't mind.
I don't see any.
Oh, you don't have any? I saw some faces I didn't.
I tried to pay them to come. Let me
go get them.
Not from the pension, I hope.
Not from the pension.
Any other councilors have questions?
Just to answer Councilor Soms, our newest member is Chuck Watson. He's an engineer. He's been great. Like all engineers, he really makes us check each and every calculation. He's really good, and it's a great addition, and I don't know who brought him in, but thank you, it was a great addition. Skip Marquardt, myself, Greg Kotecki have been around since the beginning. Again, great people. Skip's another financial advisor. Greg is very knowledgeable and has been an extreme help in trying to tie the pension plans together across school board and town environments and some things like that didn't get looked at. And we have one more member who is Bob Sampson. He's waiting for his compliance department to okay it. If you don't work in the field, it's a pain. So they've all been great, and like I said, our ex officio people and town employees have been super. Anything else?
No other questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Any other committee, commission, or board report? Moving on to comments of town councilors. Wow. Well, I won't let the opportunity go by. Everybody that knows me knows that I really love social media. But the last couple of weeks, some of the things I've seen in social media has been downright disturbing. I guess that's the best way I could call it. And my concern is about two things. One, of course, the people that never sign their name and then they post inflammatory remarks. But secondly are the people that are posting misinformation, whether they give their names or not. And, I don't care if people call the town council clueless or call us names. That's part of when you run for office. But I think we can do better, and I'm just really disappointed in what I'm seeing, and I just hope that if people have questions, they come to us, send us letters. I try to personally answer every email I get or every letter we get, and I know many of you do the same thing. And I just wish if people, rather than read some of the stuff that people post that's totally wrong, to email us or call us and ask questions. So that's my little soapbox for this evening. Anyone else now that I opened up the door for comments?
I'll just add to that so much of this information is available on the portal.
That's a good point.
It's readily available on the portal. Go and take a look. You'll see the documents. And so often it refutes what's being said in social media.
At this time, I take a motion for approval of minutes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of March 13th.
Second. Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any corrections provided? Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Receive the communication and referral list. We'll move on to council subcommittee and liaison reports. Councilor Eichelberg, admin.
Administration Committee has not met since our last council meeting, so nothing to report.
Community, any questions for admin? Community services, Councilor Marshall.
We have not met since our last meeting.
Finance committee, Councilor France. I know you've been meeting.
Yes. The Finance Committee had its regular meeting last Wednesday. We've also held 3 budget work sessions since our last council meeting. We finished the general government presentation and are in the process of reviewing the amount that was presented. And the next discussion that we have scheduled will be at our regular Finance Committee meeting on the 3rd of April. Other than that, the items that were presented to the Finance Committee will come up later in the meeting.
Thank you. Information technology, Councilor Soms.
Information technology has not met since the last council meeting.
Okay. Land use planning, Councilor Dombrowski.
Land use has also not met since our last.
Wow. Board of Education liaison, Councilor Allen.
Yes, the Board of Education did meet last Wednesday. There was a presentation for the kindergarten, Juliet Long kindergartners. They're already taking part in Common Core curriculum. The presentation revolved around reading and writing stories. And we had a video of that. It looks like they're doing an exceptional job down there. So the Agri-Science Department is very busy. There's a lot of applications. They're at a point where they're accepting about 68% of the applicants because there's a good turnout. The state, as I reported a while back, did do a report on the Agri-Science Department, but we are still waiting for the report to be released from the state so that we can review that. When that comes out, I will keep you up to speed on that. They are still on track for, oh, no, that's the following year. They're not approved that yet for the calendar. And there was a memorandum of understanding approved between Ledyard, Groton, and a sub-base that involves kids that are in school here, and should they locate to a different town, they're allowed to stay in our school district for the remainder of the year. And that is between several towns that work around the sub-base area, so it's not disruptive for the kids. And that's really about it.
Any question for our Board of Education liaison? Other liaisons, WPCA, Mr. Soms.
WPCA met last night. They met to work on their budget. They've been working on their budget. Last night they voted to approve a $490,667 sewer budget and to also recommend a $926,542 water budget for approval by the town council. You'll recall that the town council does not approve the sewer budget, but we do approve the water budget. In addition, the WPCA has been working for several years to obtain better financial data, as I think many of you know, And with the recent conversion to Munis and a lot of help from the town hall staff, have gotten a better idea of the revenues and expenses. And unfortunately, as we suspected, the WPCA is losing money and has been. So I want to spend a little time and explain that. The question has been for the last couple of years, why hasn't the WPCA run out of cash? And the answer to that is threefold. Number one, the WPCA office staff has worked very hard to improve accounts receivable, and they've collected over the past couple of years about $100,000. That helped fund the operations of the WPCA, and that's part of the reason they didn't run out of cash. The second reason is the sewer system, or the sewer side has been setting aside money every year, and the water side has been borrowing that money. Further, the water side has not been setting aside money for future infrastructure. And the fourth thing is that we recently discovered that the wheeling fees that we get for sending water across the river are supposed to go into an account for maintenance of the Holmberg tank. That money has not been set aside. It's actually been spent because WPCA has been losing money. It works differently in other parts of the town. We set money aside for major capital expenses. We have a relatively new water system now, so we're relatively okay, but our sewer plant is old. It's going to need repair, significant repairs and upgrades in the next 3 years. We're not expanding it, we're just keeping it running. The water system doesn't need repair and upgrade, but it will, and when it does, it needs a lot of money. For example, the new tank across the street, which is now about, 8 years old, at year 15, it's going to need to be repainted. If we don't repaint it, it starts to rust. Repainting that tank is very expensive. We should have been setting money aside. We haven't. So long story short, we've been running at a loss. We don't have any other sources of funding. So the WPCA has recommended that we put an interim rate increase in place, and this will have to go before public hearings, but they've set the water rate increase proposed at 13%, and they've proposed a sewer rate increase of 8%. So it was a long and difficult meeting last night, and the result of many years of work, and the news isn't good, but I think we kind of all knew this. So, and I want to thank the mayor for focusing his staff on getting the Munis system to provide the information that we need that we didn't want to see, but now we have. So that's my report.
Any questions for Councilor Solms? No questions? Okay. Mayor's report.
Thank you, Chairman Davis. I attended the Council of Governments meeting, and State Controller Kevin Lembo was there, and it's interesting, this was a week ago, and he reported that there was a $131 million deficit. And just to tell you how dynamic state finances are, if you read this morning's paper, I think it's down to $70 million. So, it's going to be a constant swinging back and forth. He did mention that the Connecticut Partnership Health Plan, this is the health plan that the state has that they are offering to municipalities. We are looking at that. We looked at it once before. We did not feel that it was the right plan for us. As you can imagine, if you go into that plan with the state, you're then kind of locked into that plan and all of the increases that may come along. So, but we are evaluating it because we are looking at all options. State Senator Kathy Austin gave us some information on what's happening up at the Capitol in terms of mandate changes and things like that. And there was one that really interested me because it's something that I know has come up before, and that is a bill on legal notice relief. As you know, we spend a tremendous amount of money every year on legal notices because of the amount of information that has to be published, and you have no options to that. So they are looking at that. My understanding when we looked at the bill is that it more deals with the amount of information you need to put in there. In some cases you have to publish an entire ordinance in there, but it may be now that you only have to publish the meeting, the subject, where it's going to be, and details like that. So that may be some help. I attended the SEAT meeting today. I'm a member of the board there, and as you all know, seeing the correspondence, they are transitioning to state oversight. The state has in fact stepped in. There were several state officials there today at the SEAT meeting. A new director has come on board, and they will be coming to the council meeting, I believe, on the 24th of April, just to brief us. As you can imagine, we don't have a significant amount of service with SEAT in the town. There is a run that goes, through here on Route 215. There's another route that goes up Route 12, and again, you can flag them down. I think there's a little bit more usage over there. But the state is looking, there's several things that we get with the state takeover. First of all, they're assuming all responsibilities for the costs of the cleanup. That could easily be $1 million to clean up the spills up at the garage up on Route 2A. The form of the board, whether the board remains as a representative board or whether it becomes a board just comprised of the 9 town CEOs, is something that remains to be seen. But the good thing about the state is that they're going to be doing studies on usage, and that's something that we in the towns have always wanted, looking at, what is the usage of SEAT, what are the routes that we need to improve, what are the routes that maybe are not profitable and are just not worth keeping. I know the comment you always hear is people see a SEAT bus go by, with nobody on it, or 1 or 2 people. Well, it's very important for those 1 or 2 people, but again, if you have to eliminate another route, that's very costly. You may have read that the Mashantuckets and Foxwoods are eliminating their $140,000 subsidy for one route in particular. That's about 1/3 of the cost of that route. They're going to look into that. The state's going to look into that with the new leadership and say, is there something we could do to make that route remain? The other thing is there's been a lot of demand from students at Three Rivers and having better transportation. You can get there now with SEAT, but it takes a long time to get there and to get back, and it's very inefficient. That could be something that would very much be in demand. So they're looking at things there. So we're very satisfied with what we're seeing with the state's involvement. Just a few points on Mr. Lamb's comments. First of all, I just want to make sure that you understand. He spoke about Cedar Ridge and what's happening with Cedar Ridge. Cedar Ridge is an unpaved town road. It's one of only 2 unpaved roads in the town. There's construction that's going on the unpaved portion of that by a developer. But again, he's dealing with a road that's already unpaved. There are 2 drains, storm drains at the end of that road that have been there from who knows when. So therefore, anything that's running off there was running off there before. And the paved portion of that road only has 1 home on it. So, to make a comparison between that and Algin Heights, where you have an entire neighborhood going in, 200 homes going in through 2 streets, of course you're going to pave those and repair those. I've been up to Cedar Ridge and looked at what's going on there. Yes, it's a bit messy because construction sites are messy. The advantage there is it's a rather flat area, so you're not getting the runoff necessarily. The contractor, as far as I know, we're not holding up the CO on that home. The contractor did not have any obligation that I know of to pave that road before that home. That 1 CO was granted. We do have a commitment from the contractor that he's going to pave that road, and I believe it's by August or September. Now, again, the town is getting a paved road out of that development, which is something that is sorely needed in that area. As far as Bittersweet, I've been to Bittersweet several times before the meeting with Mr. Lamb, after the meeting with him. I was up there today. I've taken pictures there, and I've taken pictures of other developments around town. I'm satisfied with what I see up there. Construction is as I said, it's a messy business. That development is on, it has some hills to it, but I've seen what's being done up there. We are watching what's being done there, and I invite anyone to go up to Bittersweet, take a look. I especially try to look at the road, what's coming down onto the road as far as silt going into the storm drain, and I don't think you're seeing anything unusual up there. And again, I'm satisfied with what I'm seeing. That being said, I've recommended to the council, and I recommended before it was taken on, that we need to look at our ordinance 45. There are things in Ordinance 45, I'll admit right up front, that we're not doing as well as we should. There are things we should be doing. My staff, we've met on that, and we're going to do a better job about that in just getting documentation on the things we're doing. Ordinance 45 has significant flexibility in it as to what can be done, but that needs to be documented, and I think we have a weakness there, and we're going to work on that. Ordinance 45 also requires some things that cost money and accomplish nothing, and we need to look at those things also to make them more fair and make more sense for development. And that's my report.
Are there any questions for Mayor Rodolico? I did refer the ordinance 45 back to land use at the last meeting. Curious, have you had any other calls from any residents of Cedar Ridge or Bittersweet?
I had one call from Cedar Ridge many, many months ago. Had nothing to do with the road. It was something about a home being built there. We resolved that. I resolved that with the contractor as soon as I got that. As far as Bittersweet, the only complaints I received from Bittersweet was, of course, people who were surprised when the development went in. What's going on here? To which I say, there's a road with an unfinished cul-de-sac at the end. Should raise a red flag that, hey, something's going to happen. But as of now, I've received no other comments or complaints in that area.
Any other questions for the mayor? Thank you, Mayor Rodolico. On to old business. Councilor Eichelberg, anything on the peddlers, hawkers, vendors, yada, yada, yada?
No, we still have not finished our review on this, so nothing to do with this tonight.
Okay, under new business, finance, take it away.
Make a motion to recommend the town council approve the State of Connecticut Department of Economic and Community Development certified resolution authorizing the mayor to submit 2013 Small Cities Community Development Program, CDGP, in the amount of $400,000 to carry out a Small Cities Community Development Program and to continue and execute an assistance agreement.
Second.
Any discussion?
Briefly, this is the public hearing that was held immediately prior to this meeting. It's a continuation of the effort to assist town residents in need lower middle income for repairs to their house.
Councilor Soms.
I think I'd just like to reiterate the question / statement that I made during the public hearing. So this grant is a grant from the state to the town of Ledyard. Ledyard loans the money to residents who need financial assistance in maintaining and the upkeep of their house. So it's a no-interest loan to the resident or the homeowner, which is due and payable when they sell their house. That money then comes back to the town of Ledyard to be reinvested in another home. So the town of Ledyard's taxpayers are not paying for this. We're not borrowing the money. It's a grant from the state. The state of Connecticut taxpayers are paying for this. But what's attractive about it is the fact that we can get money to the people who own homes, who need help with upkeep, especially since we had a lot of discussion and concern about the blight ordinance. There is financial assistance for those who can't afford to maintain their own home. The town has about $100,000 left of a grant that was applied for in 2011. We haven't spent it all. So if your home needs repair and you are having financial trouble in paying for it, there are requirements that you have to meet. But we would encourage residents apply for this, and we're going to have another $400,000 coming our way so that people can maintain and also increase the value of their home. So I think it's a good program.
Okay, so that means that loan could then be put off for 20 years
Yeah,
until the house turns over?
until you sell the house. So you're basically borrowing money that you don't have to pay back until you sell the home,
If you sell the home.
if you sell the home.
It doesn't deal with refinancing the rate either. It's only a sale.
Well,
It's a
refinancing would be a problem if
Yeah.
you have a lien
I would think so,
on the
too.
property.
Oh,
You have to clear it, you have to clear the lien, yeah.
But could you pay it before you sell your house?
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, all right. You're still responsible for it?
You're responsible for it.
Okay,
But
But you're not
again,
paying interest on it.
sure.
to reiterate what Councilor Song said, if and when you sell that house, if you had a $10,000 loan, that $10,000 comes back to Ledyard to go to someone else.
Right.
So this is a win-win all the way around.
Any other?
Does the town have a mechanism in there to handle the recording of the liens and the releases and everything that is part of the cost of
There's a
obtaining
closing
loan?
There's
Great.
a closing on this loan.
Right. Okay.
And Mayor, who do people speak to about this?
It's on the website, the application's on the website. Our planner, Charles Carno, is the person who handles it, but we have, social services, senior center, they all have the applications, but they can call the town hall, someone would be happy to help anyone. I don't know if Mr. Carno mentioned, but we do have I think between 20 and 30 applications mentioned that.
Yeah.
So
26.
at first we were a little concerned, we only have about 7 or 8, but they're starting to come in. And again, when I was doing Meals on Wheels the other day, I stopped at a particular home, and I looked at it, and unfortunately people weren't home, but, I just said, this is just a perfect example of a home that could be helped. And it doesn't just help that home, it helps the entire neighborhood. So again, it's something we need to get the word out, because as you said, it's a win-win in this business. And as a government-run program, what we're really, the only overhead is the consultant that we use, who does all of the work. He does all of the prepares all the bid packages, all of the paperwork. There's no burden on our staff, so it's an incredible program.
Excellent.
Any further questions? Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Agenda item number 3. 2.
Let's make a motion to transfer and appropriate $5,085 from LB's Fund 0211, Fund Balance 211-31000 into account 2112-0901, 56100, LB CNR Fund Operating Supplies for the purchase of 9 Vertex DH924 portable radios.
Second.
At the time of the Finance Committee meeting last week, we only had a single estimate provided. Mr. Jay Troy, the Director of LVs, was requested to bring forward 2 additional estimates, which he did today. Both those estimates are higher than the amount that was put in here. One was for $5,172, and the second one was for $5,796. So we have the 3 estimates as required by the purchasing orders for purchasing of $5,000. So we've now satisfied that without having to have a waiver of bid there.
Any questions? Roxanne, would you call the roll?
I distracted over here, sorry. Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Item number 3.
Motion to approve grant application to the State Department of Transportation Dial-A-Ride Program and to authorize the mayor to sign the grant application.
Second.
This grant application is an annual grant the town submits as routine to support Dial-A-Ride program. It's essentially a pro forma process that you have to renew every year in order to participate in the program.
Any questions? Roxanne?
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Item number 4.
Make a motion to authorize Dave Pitney Bond Counsel to prepare authorization documents for the middle school addition/renovation project.
Second.
Discussion.
This is the next step in the process for proceeding on the first of the 2 major projects that the town is considering. Preparing bond documents is the first step. There will be a public hearing and a town meeting, and then eventually go to referendum, assuming everything goes past. So, the bond is proposed is so far it cost us about $45 million for the middle school. As presented, the state share is about $28 million, which the Board of Ed will be bringing a grant forward, a grant application which will be later in the agenda. The town share estimated about $17 million as currently presented.
Any questions? Yes.
Yeah, so there are several items on the agenda, and I'm just interested in the process and when we are actually forwarding the middle school to the town for a referendum vote. Is this the vote? Is that a later vote?
No, it's a later vote.
Okay.
This is just to prepare bond documents. The referendum will be on May 21st. There will be a town meeting on May 13th ahead of that, that the town will have an option to come forward. And there have been multiple meetings to discuss the proposal that Dr. Grenier has held, and as well as in this meeting.
Councilor Eichelberg.
This is a lot of money. But to follow up on what Councilor Solomon and France just said, this is going to the town for referendum for the voters to decide. So I want to make that clear, that we are not deciding anything except to send it to the voters.
Actually, we're not even going that far yet.
Well, we're taking the next step, yes. So, as Mike Cherry made clear earlier, there have been a lot of opportunities to learn about these projects, to discuss these projects. There have been a lot of work put into them, and I agree that they're very needed projects. And I think we would be remiss if we didn't carry this all the way forward to referendum and give the voters a chance to vote on it.
Any other questions? Yes, Councilor Allen.
One more briefly, just dovetailing on Councilor Eichelberg. Thank you for your statements just now, because a social media outlet of sorts had a comment on it regarding the council's passage of a couple large-scale projects. And then I took a couple phone calls over the course of the week about that, and I just wanted to reiterate that we're not spending this money. We're simply bringing it through the channels so that it can get to the point where the voters make the decision. Ultimately, it's on the voters. So I hope everybody understands that.
Councilor Solomon.
So I've put a tremendous amount of thought into this project because I've been to the facilities committee meetings, I've seen the plans, we've heard Dr. Grenier make presentations. As a matter of fact, I've called Dr. Grenier. We have to do something about the middle school. And I think it's important for us to put our thoughts about this project out there. You know, it's one thing to put it to the voters and say, here you go, folks. I think it's our responsibility to also share our thoughts. So as much as I support the schools, as much as I support this project, I have a concern. And that concern is, as presented, we are planning to help pay for this project by closing Ledyard Center School. And that concerns me deeply because of my experience with the Ledyard Town Center Committee. When we started to look at Ledyard Town Center, we reached out to the businesses in Ledyard Center and we said, you know, what if we did this, what if we did that? And we received letters, you'll recall Councilor Dombrowski, back from some of the businesses. That school brings a tremendous amount of daytime traffic to the school. In the morning, at noon, in the afternoon, and in the later afternoon. And those businesses, our businesses, are concerned. They're local businesses, they're not chains, they're families that own businesses. So they're concerned if they were to lose the traffic that school brings. So, I've been following the project, and until recently, I was under the impression that we really had no option but to close Ledyard Center School because we have 3 elementary schools, we only need 2. But in discussion, I for a long time thought that it would be a great idea to rebuild Ledyard Center School because it is decrepit, it's got a lot of expenses, and there's some attachment to that school. But I don't see how we can do that when we have 3 elementary schools. We've got to choose one to close. That's the oldest one, it's the most decrepit, so it makes sense to close it. However, we're spending a lot of money to refurbish and reconstruct the middle school, which we have to fix. But the idea that came recently to me, that I shared with Dr. Grenier and I've talked with a couple of people, has been the idea of moving the middle school to Ledyard Center. So rebuild Ledyard Center School as a middle school so that we don't lose a school in the center of Ledyard. And so I have to say, it's a relatively new idea. The Board of Ed has put a tremendous amount of work into this plan for the middle school, but I'm still concerned what we're doing to Ledyard businesses. So I think I will probably vote to move this forward, but I just want to get out there that I have some concerns about what we're doing to Ledyard businesses.
Councilor Eichelberg.
And I'll add my concern. I mentioned this, I believe, a couple of weeks ago, that when we close a school, I mean, we can drive around Groton and New London and see the same thing. When we close a school, it's not the easiest thing in the world to refurb. We have the same experience with the former Gales Ferry School, and with an albatross sitting in the middle of Ledyard Center for 15 years, it's not going to be the best thing in the world for economic development. If we end up closing that school, I would love to see a plan in place beforehand to figure out what we're going to do with that before we actually close it, rather than try to deal with it somewhere down the road and, maybe put a motorcycle shop in there.
And the good news is we have time.
Yeah. I would, Bill and I would probably cancel out each other's votes at some point down the road, because to me, we need to make sure that the bond documents specifically say that this is conditioned upon the Ledyard School closing, because a lot of money that we're going to be saving is going to go towards this new project. And I cannot justify this project if, in fact, the Ledyard School, we don't realize the savings from closing Ledyard School. I would probably, no, I probably wouldn't. I probably would not vote to send it forward if it was not conditioned upon Ledyard Center School closing. I cannot justify, and I mean closing as in closing as a school.
Right.
Right, but I think what Councilor Soms is saying is that we'd end up closing the middle school.
That's correct.
So we would end up closing a school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So actually, no, we would close Ledyard Center School as an elementary school.
Exactly.
We would empty the middle school and move it here, so that there would be a school in Ledyard Center. And we would end up with 2 elementary schools.
Right.
But, in fairness, I don't know if it's feasible. You and I talked about it, but I came late to the table with the idea, Dr. Finninger. But, is it feasible? I don't know. But I have to put my hand up in good conscience now, because if there's a way to save Ledyard businesses, or at least not harm them by taking that traffic out of the center of Ledyard, I think we have to look at it. So,
Dr. Grenier?
I just wanted to address Councilor Eichelberg's point. Even in my most optimistic estimates, I think we're really looking at 5 years before we close anything. So it gives us a little bit of time. That's on the good side. On the bad side, if we were to move the school, as Councilor Soms proposed, we would really have to do a site study. And I don't think we'd be talking about, well, we wouldn't be talking about the same money. for a couple reasons. One is it would be a new school, and so we'd only get 52% reimbursement for that, not 62%. So I think, in fairness, I just want the council to know, I think the economic formula would change significantly, so that we wouldn't be looking at a town share of $17 million, which was offset. Well, there still would be offset. And the last thing I'll say is we did talk about this, and then a lot of folks are concerned, what would we do with this big facility there? It's a great place for a school. It's part of right next to, adjacent to some playing fields that are good and are being enhanced next year for softball facilities. Taking that facility and making it useful in some other capacity. And it's really, at least the footprint is good for a school, and where it is good for a school. But I do want, as good a thought as well, there have been all sorts of good thoughts that we've entertained over the last 6 years. But I do think the economics would really change. And for sure, we already got the word that a new building would be at 52%, and the state seems to be on the downslope there. So the sooner the better, as far as I'm concerned, because every time we get statements from the state education department, I get nervous because the reimbursement rate seems to be getting smaller as the state's economic problems continue. So but anyway, my main point is we would really have a 5-year window, and ultimately it's the town's building. The town would have ample time to think about some alternatives.
There's at least one member of the building committee. Did you have something you'd like to add at this point?
That we've been involved in this process with the Board of Ed at the beginning of the process, and then more recently we've been more involved. We received presentations at the Municipal Building Committee of what the intention were. We went through many of those same questions. The placement of middle school and the explanation of the benefits of putting the middle school or renovating as new the middle school where it was from an emergency shelter standpoint, having a kitchen in place with a generator and heat and hot showers. We're essentially getting a new school, and having it on the campus there as far as things along the lines of with food service for the other 2 schools. I want to correct Councilor Solomon, that we have 4 elementary schools in town, not 3.
Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah.
And that from the building committee standpoint, because we are tasked with looking at all municipal buildings, when this is no longer needed as a school, it's at that point there, whether it's demolition or whatever is done because we have costs to continue to heat that building so it doesn't have a problem, and we have to look at the demolition costs and what can be done with that property as part of a larger change in Ledyard Center, which the next project that's going to be discussed will begin to change things. Will the police station bring as many people to downtown as the school does? We hope not. The people that ride in the police cars in the back seat generally don't stop and shop on their way in. But the project has been very well thought out, and from a parent who's had 2 students to go through Ledyard Middle School, we have to do something. And reimbursement is key here because of the cost. We would not be able to build a school if there wasn't for state reimbursement.
Thank you.
Yes.
The last thing is the building committee has recommended and sent back to the town council both of these projects.
Correct.
So I just want to add to my comments. You guys have done a beautiful job with the middle school. I love the plan. I think it's a good deal for the town. I just want to surface my concern about what we're doing to the center of Ledyard and our economic development here. So I absolutely get it. It's the best thing for the school system. I want to make sure that it's also the best thing for the town, and we have to look at that, and I can't just ignore that. So thank you.
Any other comments, Councilor Dabrowski?
Yeah, I'm stuck in the middle because I agree with Bill, but I also agree with Linda. In fact, so if we do this, we need to put into the bond that the school is closed or
Conditioned upon.
Conditioned upon. But I agree with Bill, our Councilor Solomon, the same thing, is that all the letters that we received on the Ledyard Town Center Committee about how much business traffic that brings into this, within this center of town, and what impact that would be to lose that traffic flow. So I'm all.
Yes.
And to be fair, I agree with both of you. I'm not suggesting that we just keep this fourth school open when we don't need one. That is a financial drain. I'm not suggesting that, but I want to solve this problem, and I don't know how. So.
Could I ask for somebody that might know better than I, with my little concern about making sure that the bond documents include conditioned upon, that those words are in there some way? How do we do that?
I've been working with finance director, who's been working with bond counsel, and I've given all that information, and we've been assured that we can put appropriate words into that document, just as there are words that we will be putting in concerning applying for state grants. So we have been assured that that will happen. And by the way, just a point about bond counsel, there's no cost for bond counsel unless the project passes. So it's not a waste of money necessarily on that. This is a personal observation. I've attended many of the meetings also for the school project, as well as obviously all of the police building. And early on, it was several months ago, there was a meeting on safety at the middle school, because this project really has a safety component to it that's very important. And I count chairs in meetings because it's easier to count the empty chairs. And there were at least 300 people at that meeting. I can't remember the last time we had a meeting with that many people at a meeting to look at something. And a presentation was made about this project. And so people, there's been a real effort to educate people about this. And just on the economic development part, and economic development is a struggle. It's a struggle in the state, and it's a struggle in the town. But we have to look at it this way. If we're really going to progress economic development in the center of town, you've got to look at it. You've got to say, well, where am I going to have that development? If you take the lot next door to us out of the mix, and you take the center school property out of the mix, you don't have a whole lot of area to develop economically in the town. And is it a bit of a gamble? Yes, it is. But I would like to see that property is marketed as something to bring responsible and attractive development to our town. And I think it's the perfect piece of property to do that. There's a significant amount of traffic, trust me. I have to make a left turn out of the parking lot every evening. I spend a lot of time there waiting for traffic. There's a lot of traffic going through the town. Sure, we're going to relocate some of those folks, but many of them are still going to have to come through the town. So, the point is we have a 5-year head start. How do we replace the school? And what do we do to bring development that brings, maybe it doesn't bring all those people, at one point in the day, but it's bringing them in on a constant basis, similar to what the bank does, similar to what the post office and Holdridge's. And I think that's what we need to be looking for.
Any other comments from town councilors? Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Song?
No.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
7 in favor, 1 opposed.
Motion carries. Next item.
Make a motion to authorize Dave Pitney Bond Council to prepare authorization documents for the police facility project.
Second.
Similar discussion from the middle school project, Steve preparing the bonds, documents for the police facility as recommended by the municipal building committee for the complex here near the town hall.
Any questions, discussion, comments? Yes. Councilor Eichelberg?
I'm going to speak exactly the opposite of some of the things I said about the elementary school. Even though this is a police station, I believe that this is going to significantly help to revitalize the center of the town. I think that will go a long step forward toward helping toward the economic development in the center of town. You look around and new development tends to attract new development, regardless of whether it's a police station or business or whatever it is. If people see things happening, they like to get involved. So I think this is going to be a great addition to the center of town. We're really hoping to see some sorely needed changes to this whole municipal complex. So I intend to vote in favor.
Councilor Song.
I'm going to run the same story again. It's about the economic development and the traffic, and I totally agree with Councilor Eichelberg. I know that we looked at other locations for this, and I'm going to just say one more time that there are other towns in our region which have put municipal buildings here, there, and everywhere because big, flat, green, open spaces are very attractive to build on. But what they do is they disperse your town, the sense of your village. So if you say to anyone in this county, where's Ledyard? They know where Ledyard Center is. If you say, where's Gales Ferry? They know where Gales Ferry is. And I know that we looked at some locations outside of town, and I want to thank the building committee for listening to the town center committee and several people who made that argument that we want to have a concise, concerted, small village feel. And having that brand new building in the center of town, not only will, I agree with you, attract new development, but it also, I want to welcome the Ledyard Police Department back in town. It's been a long time.
Councilor Allen.
Yeah. Though having toured the Ledyard Police Department, I see that it is very much in need of a new police station. Though I would probably dispute what economic development, new government buildings in the center of town is going to do. That being said, I think it's one of those things that we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see what it brings.
Councilor Dabrowski.
I also echo Councilor Allen. I'm not sure how much police stations will do for economic development, other than a better looking building than what's there now. Several years ago, when I chaired the Ledyard Town Center Committee, and that building was brought to the Ledyard Town Center Committee, what we're going to do with that, I said then, tear it down, because that's about the only thing you can do. So this is a much better option. I also like the fact that we bring the municipal building back into one location instead of having it separated. Like Councilor Somm had stated, you know where Ledyard Center is, you know where Gales Ferry is. How many people know what Preston Town Hall is? You don't even, you can't find it. I'm not sure somebody tells you where it is, but it's in the middle of nowhere. So I like the fact that, municipal building belongs in the village center.
Well, my first choice is actually the Gales Ferry School, interestingly enough. And, but I was out of town the meeting when the presentation happened here. And I was listening on, I was watching the video from my hotel room. And I was so impressed with Bill's plea for the center that I sort of found myself back into this direction. And then I know that the building committee really took a long time, and I know they struggled and they really deliberated over the location. So I think it is the right, certainly the right choice, and I certainly intend to support that. Any other? Yes, Councilor.
Yes, I'll talk to it on a different perspective. Actually, my first preference for location would have been the old town garage property. And the rationale for that, it's a piece of property that's likely never to be developed by a private entity based on what was there before. However, the location here has some of the same properties to it. It is not large enough really to do significant economic development with the town hall here, the right of ways that are on it for the surrounding property. So it has some of the same characteristics to the Old Town Garage location. Much better than an open, relatively open area like some of the other areas that were being considered. So I think from my perspective, the reason I am supportive of this particular location is because the property won't be used for anything else in all likelihood. So by marrying up the two public buildings, the town hall and the police facility, allows you to have one large complex as opposed to a piece of property that cannot be developed and with a building on it that if we want to take down, it really costs the town money, and then putting it someplace else where we can leave open space or a green area for the time being. So I think it's a good compromise from where I really wanted it to be, for a piece of property that won't be used for anything else. But as I said, this has some of those same characteristics, so I support this.
Mayor Rodlico, did you have something?
I just had a couple of comments. I appreciate the comments that have been made and support that this project has received. Some of us were around, over the past 20 years when, we made what I think was a bad decision, and I'll take blame for it because I was involved in government at the time. By moving to that building that we moved into and that we purchased for the police was never adequate. And it seemed like a solution at the time. It was a better solution at the time, but we didn't take it. We probably could have solved this problem, 15 years ago or 20 years ago for $500,000. But, you pay for your mistakes. I think I always say there are many sites we looked at. Our architect, Brian Hughes, is here. He spent many, many hours with us analyzing all of the information we gave him and giving what I think was some objective appraisals. I also started by thinking it should be in the Galesbury School. I made that proposal last year, didn't go anywhere. And we already know that was a temporary solution to move into that location. Would have taken a tremendous amount of renovation of a building, and partial renovations of buildings we've all found are very troubling, and they tend to be very expensive, and it would not have fully solved the problem. You just stare at a map of Ledyard, and you're almost at the geographic center of the town, and possibly the population center of the town. And I know that police are out on patrol, but again, there's a sense of that. I know there are many towns in this region that would love to have their police facility or their buildings all in one complex, and they can't do it. At the start of the meeting, we talked a little bit about social media, and here again, I'd just like to, respond a little bit to some of the points that somehow, I had picked this site originally, and it's the site that was handpicked. Well, trying to move people to my way, if I have that kind of talent, I guess I've got a great career ahead of me. But we looked at many sites. There were sites that I added to the list. I agree. The Old Town Garage, at one point I thought that was the way to go. I spent significant time talking to the state about that site and realized it just wasn't feasible for a couple of reasons. I thought the transfer station, piece of cake, nice, clean piece of property, easy to put it in there. And I thought there were some advantages to putting it up in that area. The troubling part is that, all of the meetings we've had, which have extended almost a year now, and I can't think of more than one or two members of the public who ever attended a building committee meeting when we were going through this. And now for the public to come forward and say, you picked the wrong site, or, you handpicked the site without giving a reason why another site would be better. And that's what troubles me a little bit, because, you're not adding to the dialogue. If there were reasons to have the other site, boy, about 3 months ago would have been the time to know that. Not at this point. Just one other thing, and I'll close with this. Just take a person who moves to town. We get people all the time that come to the town hall, either thinking of moving to town or recently moved to town. And what's their first experience? Swing to the right, miss the pothole up by the, in the driveway, avoid the tree right next to it, and, and then go over all the hills and valleys to find a parking space in there. The impression we give, and, we're not going to renovate the town hall probably in our lifetime, but, just that first impression that you get. And if you look at the plan, and the plans are up there, this brings a lot of green space. We really, considering it's really a small site for the two buildings, the architect has done a good job of bringing green areas into there and just making it a nice, attractive site for people who come in and say, wow, this looks like a nice place. Maybe this is the place to live, or maybe this is the place to have a business. And so, these intangible things, that I think add to the value again of Ledyard Center and to our town.
Historical Society is doing a presentation on the agricultural history of Ledyard, which includes the potholes and
Just one other comment. I mentioned to somebody today that I think it would be interesting to go through town and randomly pick out about 15 people and say, do you know where the Ledyard police station is? And I would bet 13 of them don't know where it is right now. And that certainly will change that by having it in the center of town. So good work, Building Committee. Thank you very much. And Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. And would you make the next motion, Councilor France?
Make a motion to authorize the preparation of schematic drawings and outline specification for the Ledyard Middle School renovation project. In addition, authorize the Board of Education to file a grant application for the middle school addition renovation project.
Second.
Dr. Bernier, could you explain this? Because I don't really know. I understand the grant, but I don't know what the preparation of schematic drawings. I mean, I know what that means, but I don't understand the process.
In the filing of the state application grant, EDO 49, there's a kind of checklist, and for a renovate as new project, it specifically says, typically the board does this, the Board of Ed, for a smaller project, but for a renovate as new project, it specifically says that the town governing body has to do it. So we have, of course, we've already done the architectural schematics and so forth, but in order to apply for the grant, in essence, even before the referendum, we have to have the town council's endorsement of at least the concept of going forward.
Okay, so this isn't going to cost us anything?
No.
They're already done? Oh,
Absolutely.
okay, I just
Yeah.
wanted to clarify. That's what I didn't understand. Councilor Dombrowski.
So what you're doing, just to clarify in my mind, is you're taking the schematics that you've shown in the public hearings that for the architect you have,
That's
and
correct.
supplying that with the grant application to the state.
That's right.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Any other questions? Roxanne?
I'm just going to explain my no vote.
please do it.
Again, you've done a great job on the school. I just want to, I'm going to vote no just because I want to underscore my concern for what's going to happen in our future plans for when we have to close the school. Let's start thinking about it now.
Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
No.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
No.
So that's 6 in favor, 2 opposed.
Motion carries. Discussion, work session issues. Does anybody have anything they want to mention for the good of the group? I bet you'd all like me to adjourn the meeting, wouldn't you?
Motion to adjourn. Second.
Without objection.